Great. Well, I think we can get things going as I think we actually have a full house right now. So again, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this first In Conversation event. We're super thrilled to have our guest speaker, Nathaniel Ofori, for this first In Conversation event, talking about what is interactive radio, along with a whole bunch of other topics. Once again, please make sure that if you have questions throughout, please use either the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen or use the chat function. We have some wonderful team members of ours who will be triaging and helping to curate what some of the questions are that you have so that we can make sure that we get to them. But Nat and I will have a conversation of going over a few questions that we've selected beforehand. Please also make sure that at the end, when you get a quick 3-question survey from Zoom, please feel free to answer that. And please do answer that so that we can make sure that we are able to either make more of these events or change the style of them or get to topics that you'd be particularly keen on, particularly as our most loyal and consistent donors, being our monthly donors. So thank you for your support and thank you for that feedback right away. We also have folks from our team in the chat. We have Brenda, Sula, Chantel, and Tara, all in the chat who are able to answer some of your questions as well. So please don't be shy on the question front side of things and make sure that you give them a big shout out and round of applause as well. And at the end, we'll also give opportunities, should you want to unmute and to be able to chat with Nathaniel about any questions that you have about some of the things we're going to discuss today. But first, I would like to introduce Nathaniel. Obviously, Nathaniel works with us here at Farm Radio International as our digital innovation manager. He has experience in computer and telecommunication engineering. He's based out of Accra in Ghana, and he works on the innovation side of things, innovating new technology solutions that can enhance the power of radio to serve rural listeners in Africa, and is committed to the creative use of technology in facilitating the intersection of social change between individuals and communities at both the global and local levels. Nathaniel is a powerful force in the workplace and uses his positive attitude and tireless energy to encourage others to work hard and succeed. And I'd say that is definitely not giving Nathaniel as much credit as he deserves, but we're super excited to have him for our first In Conversation. So Nathaniel, Nat, welcome, and super excited to have a conversation with you with all of our wonderful donors.
Thank you very much. And I'm also grateful to be part of this family. So thank you very much for having me.
Oh, well, super thrilled to have you and really grateful as well, given the time difference between here and Ghana. I'm wondering, Nat, maybe what we can start with is a little bit about you. And I'm wondering if we could start with how you actually ended up at Farm Radio in the first place. And then maybe after that, if you could explain a bit about what your role entails on either a regular basis or just in general.
Thank you very much. That's an interesting question when it comes to how I ended up at Farm Radio. I ended up at FRI, Farm Radio, through my national service program. In Ghana, there is a country's national service that you are mandated to do as part of every graduate so that you serve the nation before you can go ahead and work in other organization or different institution. So as part of that first, I was introduced at Farm Radio, and I did a few volunteer work. And fortunately, based on the outcome of my skill sets, I was offered an opportunity to work at Farm Radio. I went through the interview process, and fortunately, I got the job, and I'm here. I think the rest is history now, since I work with Farm Radio International. So very short story. Yeah, this is how I ended up at Farm Radio. Quite interesting.
Very much so. And then outside of Farm Radio, are there any things that you're involved in that either relate to this work or that you just enjoy doing that make up more of who it is that you are?
Interesting part is I was working with a community church and then I was helping them with the audio work. So I was in charge of the audio department. So I used to help them with sound and those things. Unfortunately, when I got the opportunity, sorry, at work at Farm Radio, I mean, the name definitely defines what we do. We use radio to disseminate tailor-made information, and quality of audio is also important because that's what also establishes some level of listenership if you are producing a very good radio program and from a technical perspective. So with my skill set in that, it also created that avenue. It also gave me the upper hand, going through the interview process and presenting what, I can do and what I can also offer. Apart from that, my first degree also helped because I was also a teaching assistant, assisting the school. So with that expertise, presenting and also helping students, it also gave me that opportunity for me to also support radio station in that angle. So I believe, my contribution in different areas, contributed my availability and the opportunity for me to work with farm radio. Yeah.
It definitely sounds like a lot of those cumulative experiences of not just teaching, but also the technical elements really make for a perfect a perfect set of skills for what it is that you're focused on now. And I'm wondering, Nat, if you could tell us a bit about, in your role as our digital innovation manager, what does that look like on a regular basis? If you could even say what it looks like on a regular basis, because it seems like it almost changes by the day because technology is ever changing and we're constantly evolving how it is that we do what we do.
Yeah. Yes, and that's so true. And if you hear the title, you may think I deal with machines 24/7, but with my role as a manager, I deal with people almost every single day. And the importance of an application or a system is not how huge it is, but the impact that it is having in the society. So my typical role is my day-to-day activities for us to look at what we are offering, as an organization, and also what we are improving based on what, we are offering to, end users. And also managing staff in the different countries. We sometimes you are dealing with 16 countries. If we have projects in all these 16 countries, you are managing people in 16 countries, ensuring that all, the strategies and approaches that has been, outlined as well, is well being implemented on the ground to achieve the common objective that has been outlined, in the proposal or in a document, So I must also say that if I point out that managing 16 countries, I mean, I think it's overstretched because I also have people or colleagues that I work with that also manages, people in these countries, and they report. So it is more of, human, management and human resource kind of approach. And when it comes also to the technical side, we also look at, the overall outcome of what we are developing. Our role is for us to come up with systems and application which will translate in the life of, someone in a rural community. So the most important for my work every single day is what can we improve to change lives? What can we improve to give voice, to the voiceless? So for me, from a broader perspective, that is my work every single day, for me to come up with these innovative, ideas, these innovative concepts with the help of my team, which will ensure that, lives are being changed and people are getting the right voices, to voice out, their issues, and also create that, avenue for people to know that there is, a platform or a space for them to express their view on a given subject.
And I think that's a super important point, Nat, just in general, that folks can miss, and that it's great to have all these advancements in technology, but we really have to center the humanity in it, in that you need to make sure that whatever it is that you're developing not only is usable, but it's understood how it helps to enhance that humanity for those people who ultimately will either use it or interact with it, whatever that looks like.
Yes, and for me, that is very important. And if you look at the current trend of, software engineering, or when it comes to developing application, it is important to have the user at the center of the whole process. If you develop something and it is not making an impact, or it's not useful to the end user, I mean, for me, you have developed nothing, because it must relate to the current situation on the ground. People must see the need for using, that particular tool or that particular service or that particular product or application that you are developing. So for me, that is very, very important. And also, it must also be in line with the organization's value and mission, because you can't develop something that goes contrary to what the organization believes and the mandate of the organization. So for me, that is very, very important. That should be the underlying factor when it comes to, software development or building an application, so that, your end users will benefit from.
And are there particular barriers that exist or that cause that friction between those elements? Or is it pretty straightforward? How do you find that those different elements work together or work against each other and cause that friction?
For me, the work of farm radio is unique, and I think that's has kept me up to this point, because the main objective is for us to disseminate tailor-made information, to make an impact, in a very small community, whether it is a very small community or a peri-urban. So the values and objective is well underlined, but sometimes you can also, be moved based on the current trends of applications and tools, because there's a whole lot of tools available and you can explore in so many ways. But the underlying factor is always important. The question is it going to make an impact? If it's going to make an impact, is it going to be a positive one? So a definition from my end when it comes to innovation is not just creating, it is creativity plus value. So you are creating a system, you are creating a tool, you are creating a service. That is fantastic. But is there a value in what you are creating? If yes, is it in line with the organization's objective, when it comes to what you are developing? So for me, that is very important. So apart from coming out with tools and being creative and innovative and all that, systems and procedures are there to guide you to come up with such, innovative tools and systems. A typical example is, what a lot of people use is now when it comes to the software world is the agile method, which helps developers to go through those processes to develop tools. Why? Because you need those procedures, you need those guidance, those methods to ensure that you don't repeat a mistake that another organization has done in the past. So for me, that is important. My role is to ensure that we go through that process, and at the end of the day, we come up with services and tools that makes an impact to a community or to a group of people, which will translate to a bigger picture affecting the nation at large.
So that sounds like a good segue, Nat, into what we're here to talk about today, which is about interactive radio. And I'm wondering from farm radio's side of it, or farm radio's perspective, and from your perspective, what is interactive radio And then maybe as a follow-up after that, why is that interactive component of it so important?
Yeah, and yes, and thank you for that question. And I've received a similar question in the past. So people say, I mean, what is interactive radio? I mean, there's a whole understand that, I mean, interactivity is basically coming up with a teaching methodology and all that. But when it comes to the fun radio context, for us, radio, traditionally, is considered a one-way tool. So radio itself is a one-way tool. So we use radio to disseminate tailor-made information. We use it to, broadcast, information to end users. So you may be in your house or your office and you'll be receiving information. And we know that, I mean, that works and that works very well. But communication itself must be a two-way communication, must be two-way. Because, I mean, receiving an information and not giving feedback, creates, a problem. So communication itself must be two-way. And that is what interactive radio is all about. Interactive radio is using mobile, mobile technologies or polling application, and ensuring that those technologies creates that medium to have a two-way communication in your radio program, and for it to create a conversation, between the broadcasters at the radio station and the community or listeners, and also to spark, dialogue between between communities. But that is very, very important. So for us, the definition of interactive radio is by using, mobile phone technologies and other application and creating that, interactive, components, or creating that techniques that radio station can use, by themselves to create a dialogue and engagement, between their listeners and the radio station.
And the super interesting thing that I've tried to pick up from you, Nat, even in our call prepping for this yesterday, was talking about the types of tools that we do use to facilitate that interactivity, because it is so important to make sure that people not just get their information, but also feel that they can engage with it and get more out of it than perhaps they would have if it was just received through that one way of communication. And the thing that we were talking about in particular was the Uliza interactivity application. And I was wondering if you could walk us through a bit of how it works and what exactly is encompassed in that Uliza interactivity application.
Yes, and you have, I mean, nail it right. For me, interactive radio is important, but at the end of the day, what tool are you going to use to establish, that interactivity? I mean, an SMS platform works, but if you are dealing with, rural communities and they have challenges when it comes to sending SMS or reading text messages, although SMS can create that interactivity, is it the right tool for you to use, in your radio program to ensure that you achieve the interactive radio components? If, for example, you want to use a social media platform or instant messaging like WhatsApp, Telegram, or Signal, the question is, will your end users be able to use these two to interact with you? So interactive radio is important, but you always have to factor in the end user, the one who is going to use, the application. So that is why at Farm Radio, we decided that, why not integrate a particular, tool called the interactive voice response, which helps, listeners to call or to dial a number and interact, with an application. Like, for example, calling your call center, you just dial a number and then you interact with that. But it is not just interacting with, the application, but also ensuring that the message that ends up at the radio station can be visualized and can also be analyzed. So I know this may sound a bit too much, per the explanation. So I'll share my screen and show you a few pages based on the application that we have developed for you to appreciate how it works. So if you wouldn't mind, please give me a second and then let me share my screen. So I believe you can see my screen, or
Not yet, no.
okay. Can you see my screen now? It should work now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Got it.
Great. Great. So in a typical radio show, the radio station have the opportunity to create a poll, to create an on-air dialogue between the listeners and the radio station. So I've just created a very simple demo, which will ask us how long we wash our hands. And then the next one is for us to tell why we like to bath, just to create that fun for you to understand, what normally happens on a radio show. So this is, the dashboard that the presenter or the radio station normally, sees. But for you to participate as a listener or, a caller, you need to dial a number. So for this, I will be grateful if we can all try this number. I will also do it myself. I have my phone here. I'll dial this number. It's a Canadian number, so that we will appreciate, or we will witness how the system works and, create that dialogue. So the number is +161 390 098 719. And it is always good to take it again. So let me repeat them again. It's +161 390 98719. Now, because we want to create, so you can dial this number, and because we want to create, the opportunity for listeners to participate without paying, we have implemented a call handler or a call methodology called a callback, which helps the caller to beep the number, and then the caller will receive a callback. So in this case, you will notice that I have received, the callback, and I'll just put it on loudspeaker so that we'll appreciate the flow.
The question of the week is, how long do you wash your hands? Press 1 for 20 seconds. Press 2 for 2 minutes. Press 3 for 5 minutes.
So I'll select 2 for 2 minutes.
Tell us why you like to bath. You will hear a bell, which will mean that you should start speaking your response. When you have finished recording your answer, please press any key to save your recording. Remember to tell us your name, your ID number, and which district you are from. Start speaking now.
Thank you very much. I like to bath because it keeps me fresh. Thank you very much. Bye. So I pressed any key or any number on my keypad to save the message. So at the radio station or at my end on the dashboard, I can check the audio that I have received on the system. This is an old one. Let me look for what we have, and this one. Great. So I have my name already in the system. So if you look at the dashboard, you will notice that the first question says, how long do you wash your hands? And based on the response that we have received so far, we have 4 people who have selected 20 seconds, and a person has selected 2 minutes. And I believe I'm the one who selected the 2 minutes. And we will go into details and see who selected what. So if you even look at this data, it gives you an insight of what listeners think about the period or the longer minute that you need to spend by washing your hands. This can even go a step further to inform the next radio program, to advise, people the best time to wash your hands. So you'll notice that it is not just a radio program, but it is also a way for us to gather feedback from our listeners, which goes to inform the next topic that is required to discuss on the show. So for us, that is very important to have that insight from listeners. The second question, says that, please tell us why you like to bath. Now, this is an open-ended question, and the open-ended question is important because it gives the radio station an opportunity for them to have content. So you'll notice that the multiple choice question creates an insight of what listeners are saying, but the open-ended creates that content, that pool of contents for them to tap into and play it on the radio, because the presenter is not just passing on information, but rather receiving information or collecting information from listeners and also projecting the voices of the community so that these voices will inform decisions or the next steps that the authorities need to take. So to go into details, I don't know this person, but there is a number here which ends with +46. The last number is 46, and I can play it.
Craig Barlow, Ottawa, Canada.
So the person mentioned his name, and that was it. So because the person did not save it, you will notice that it took a while before the call ended. So, and I have my audio recording here.
Thank you very much. I like to start the call. Kiss me first. Thank you very much.
Great. So you can, I believe you heard my voice, and there is another number here.
So I'll select 3 minutes.
So I believe that the person was hearing, was listening to what I was doing, and the audio recorded. So here I can also track what this person selected. So on the question results board, this number selected 2 seconds because the color code indicates that this person selected 2 seconds. During my demonstration, I selected 2 minutes. So you notice that the color code matches the 2 minutes. And then this number also selected 2 seconds. So you notice that the color code also matches that. The results summary board gives you a summary of all the boards. So here we have 3 blocks. It means that we have 3 audios on the system, which, you know, helps or guides the listener to go through those stages. And for us, this is very important also, because this is the total number of responses that we have received. And for us, it is important. Why? Because it gives us a clearer picture of the number of responses that we have received in total, both the open-ended question and also the closed-ended question. But because content is very important for the radio station and Fun Radio as an organization, we have singled out the content aspect, and that is the recorded responses. So here you'll notice that we have, you know, 4, you know, recorded audios on the system at the moment. To check, we have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 voices. Now we will check and notice that there is a third. Let me just refresh this page. We will notice that we have a 4th voice which just came in. So let me count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I now have 5 voices. So you notice that the system has immediately updated itself and we have 5 voices. So this is real time. There's no delay. The moment the call cuts, the system captures it, and then it is displayed on the dashboard. Now, the last part is the number of participants. Now, this is important also because we are not just looking at the respondents, people who have responded to the question, but people who have even attempted to even participate in the radio program. Because it's important for the radio station to also follow up with messages or tips, you know, because maybe they tried and there was a network connectivity issues. Maybe, I mean, they tried and then they ran out of battery and all that. So you need to have that number of people who have participated, whether they responded or they decided not to respond. So apart from the radio station having this dashboard and having this, you know, important feedback, we also go a step further where we showcase the breakdown of the results. So let me just do this quickly and then we can go back to, you know, the discussion. So when I come to this, the results itself, you notice that now I am going a bit further of doing analysis of the data itself. So it is not just producing a show, but analyzing the data to see the key areas that needs to be talked about on the radio, because the listeners will point out key areas that they want to hear, key issues that they want us to address. So if I go to, so before I go to our responses, you will notice that 10, you know, people called. Out of the 10 people, we had 6 people answered the first question and 4 people decided not to answer. Now, this may be the same phone number or it may be a different phone number. So the 6 people that answered, or the 6 answers that we have received are recorded here. So you notice that we have all the phone numbers here, people who have, you know, recorded the answer, and a similar approach or a similar data for the open-ended question. So we create that, you know, avenue for communities and the radio station and authorities to have a conversation on one platform, so that the issue that is going on at the community are addressed on the radio, and then a decision is taken based on the dialogue that we have created. So the system helps us to bridge that gap, between the community and the authority by using radio to disseminate this information, to make it a two-way communication. And that approach is the definition of interactive radio.
And I think it speaks exactly to what you're talking about before, Nat, and that it's great to have these pieces of technology and these applications, but if they're not centered with the individual in mind who will actually use them, and it'll actually allow them to feel like they and truly have a dialogue with those that they're looking to communicate with, there's no point to do it. And in this case, it seems to hit the mark. Before I get into the questions from the audience, something I'm curious about, and we talked a little bit about this before when we were preparing for this conversation, was around, in particular, women and their access to things like technology and their ability or their access to applications or programs like this. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about if there are particular challenges that women face around getting involved with this type of technology and being able to interact and be represented in applications and programming like this.
Yes, yeah, that is true. There is challenges when it comes to women, interacting with us, but we all see that if a challenge is not solved, it becomes a problem. So fortunately, we have been able to come up with, solutions to mitigate that, situation or that challenges. So, and the data shows that, and based on, and we have done this over the years, it shows that 30% of women normally participate, or interact with the system. But access to mobile phones is available to them, but ownership is always a problem. So they may have access to mobile phones, but own a mobile phone is where the problem is. So the question is, how can we create a medium to ensure that when they have access, they can call and participate, so that we don't create, we don't create a competition, between the men and the women. And I mean, if you have 70% of the interaction coming from men, it means that it takes a long time, or it becomes a bit difficult for women to interact and share their views. So one of the ways that we have come up with is to create a separate line for women. So it's a deliberate attempt. So this line is strictly for women. So we normally give it to the women's group so that they can call and voice out, their issues or their views, based on the topic that is being discussed on the radio. So that is one approach. The other approach is for us to ensure that the promotional aspects, of the show has the elements of women participation. So for us, it's a default where all promotional messages encourages, women to participate, and also encourages men to encourage their sisters, their mothers, their wives, their, partners to interact, with us and also share their views. Apart from that, to be more deliberate, as part of our radio segment, the edutainment aspect is very, very important, meaning the educational aspect and the entertainment aspect. It's very important. So we have come up with quiz competitions, for women. So as part of women participating in our polls and interacting with our radio shows, they have an opportunity to, participate in the quiz competition to answer questions and all that. So you may have, a man in the community who will encourage the sister to call and answer some of the questions, so that it will boost or encourage other women to participate. So it is not just about the promotional aspects, but you also have to create that trigger, which would create that avenue for women, to participate and feel part of the show. So for us, that is important. But when it comes to the system design, in terms of the content, we use women to, record the voices for us, unless there's a situation where that is impossible, but we haven't encountered that. So for us, women voices is very, very important in terms of what you listen to and what you respond to. So you notice that this demonstration, that we just did, it was a woman's voice that was recorded on the system, so that, in a way, we will be, ensuring that that component is well projected, and we are pushing it to ensure that we do our part to achieve that aspect.
And that, again, goes back to the centering the user in whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, and understanding what some of their needs are, what some of the, let's say, pain points or challenges they might come up against, and not just making an assumption and doing a broad stroke, but really collecting that data and making changes based on what you learn and what you can put into practice. And I think you put it really well, that a challenge is fine, but if a challenge is not solved, then it becomes a problem. And we don't want to have these pervasive problems happening that impair our ability to make things better.
Definitely.
So Nat, I'd love to pass it over actually to our audience. I'm wondering, can we unshare the screen? Is it okay if we take down the screen just so we can get a bigger picture of yourself?
Sure. Second, let me just do this.
There we go.
Thank you very much, Tayo.
So yeah, I just took it down. I hope that's all right.
That's fine.
So I'd love to turn it over to our audience, because I'd like to make sure that you get your questions answered as well. And I'm going to make my way down the list in no particular order. And I'd like to start with Robert and Mary Carley. Wondering if we can, Robert and Mary, if we can unmute them and invite them up to the stage to ask their question. And hopefully I'm pronouncing their last name correctly.
Hi.
Robert and Mary, over to you.
Hi. Hi. This is wonderful. Thank you so much for this and all your hard work. It's really helping me understand this so much better. I have a question about how you manage language differences in terms of the farmer listener asking the questions, and do you have services available that interprets the question and then sends the information back if there is a two-way dialogue in a language that they understand? Is that a fair question to ask?
Yes, definitely. And that's a very good question. Now, the radio station serves as the bridge between the listeners and our interactive approaches. Now, the radio station normally broadcasts in the local dialects of the community. So the contents of the system or the application is recorded by the radio station. So normally the radio station will appoint a woman from the station, and they will assist us in terms of recording the content. So they serve as voice actors. So the content on the system is definitely in their local dialects. Now, in terms of responding to their questions, we have two ways. So I don't know if I can share my screen again, but the first point is that if the question is not sensitive and is something that can be addressed on the show, as part of our radio program, we have a segment called Have Your Say. And the Have Your Say segment helps us to play voices from our application, and then the experts, in the studio, listens to these voices and provide answers to them. So you notice that we may have similar, questions, which are questions that are related. So the resource person or the experts in the studio will summarize them and provide answers to them. But you may also have a question which is sensitive, which, you know, cannot be discussed on the show. With that, we have created a medium where, apart from broadcasting the information, we can also narrowcast the information. So apart from using the radio to broadcast information to a larger audience, we can also use our tool to narrowcast the information to the end user. So just a quick one. Let me just do this for you to appreciate how it works. Sorry, let me just share my screen once more. And I believe, I don't know if you tried calling the number. So I'll just use somebody's number on the system. So I'll just change this phone number and make it an outgoing call so that you can receive, you know, the call. And then I'll just come here where we have listener, we call it listener voices. And then I'll just select this, and it will pull the numbers. Let me just select. Good. So let me just select this. And then I'll select this number. So I'm just selecting a random number. Now, what I want to do is I want to reply this number. So when I play this voice,
so refreshing.
so it says it's so refreshing. So what I can do is I can transcribe this. I can also tag this and say new and save it. So you see that I've transcribed and I've also tagged it. It means that you can tag the question and you can also transcribe the question in English or French or other language, because if the language is in local dialect, the one who is going to reply must have kind of like a few pointers so that person can reply. So for my end, I can record or I can even attach an audio. So let me just attach an audio from our library. So let me just attach this audio, which says,
Bienvenue à la campagne radio.
so it's French. So let me just attach that. And then I'll say that, okay, I want to send this to you. So let me just send it to you. Now, what happens is that this audio will be sent to the end user so that the end user can receive the call and appreciate the response from the experts. So we are narrowcasting, you know, the information instead of broadcasting the information. So this will be recorded in the local dialect and it will get back to, you know, the end user so that sensitive informations are treated separately, and also information that can be addressed or that are public consumption can also be broadcast on the show, and then answers will be addressed by the experts.
Thank you.
And something else to mention is that a lot of the programs are also recorded in the local languages of those who are listening. So that's also a way in which that information can, that's also a way that we can account for different languages of folks who are calling in and leaving their questions with the radio station. We're about 7 minutes away from the end, so we want to try to get in 1 or 2 more questions. Maybe we can go next to Craig Barlow. Craig, could I invite you up and to ask your question?
And I just want to confirm that the number I sent the call to, did you receive a call in French?
Can you hear me?
Correct. Yes, please. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. My sorry about the not answering the question. I got a bit confused, but anyway, my question is, with respect to younger people, say 15 and younger, does Farm Radio International interact with them, and do they take any special steps when dealing with young people as opposed to people who are older than 40? do you treat them differently in today's world because they're probably more technologically advanced than older people?
Yes, and that's a good question. We have factored that into our strategic intention plan, and you'll notice that at the beginning I mentioned that we always assess the tools that we are using and also project the impact of those tools. Now, in urban areas, a lot of people uses instant messaging like WhatsApp, Telegram, and all that. So at the moment, our next projects that we'll embark on very shortly, at the moment, we are looking at these tools and how can we integrate that in our interactive application. Having said that, a lot of these youth have access to mobile phones. So making phone calls, quite easy for them to do. So they tend to get this process very easily. But the content for us is super important. So it's not just the technology, but the content that has been uploaded on the system. You will notice that when you tried, the question was, we were asking a question about how long do you wash your hands? Why do you like to bath? And this is an audio that I picked from a project that we did in Sierra Leone and Liberia. And the focus was geared towards, educating young ones about the best practices when it comes to, washing their hands, hygiene and all that. So you notice that the tone of the recording, the approach of the recording is different, as to calling, a call center, which will address your needs straightforward and be, the tone will hammer it at this particular point. You notice that this is friendly. The questions are very easy to answer, so that you would create that gamified approach. So they are participating, but they see it as more of playing, with the system, but in a way they are answering those questions. The other aspect also is the quiz component that I mentioned, the edutainment aspect. So you're educating them through entertainment. And the quiz component or the quiz segment is one way to ensure that you have the youth participating in the radio show. And other, segments or approaches that we have introduced, that like the reality show, on the radio and all that. That helps us to draw closer, to the youth, so that they will relate with the program and the tools that we are developing. Now, the instant messaging integration that's where we are researching, will start very soon, came out of an engagement with the youth. And they indicated that it would be great for us to include instant messaging in our application so that, they can engage more with it. So we are not just adding a functionality or a feature, but we are adding a tool or a component which will translate towards the impact that it will have on the younger ones.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Mm-hmm. Nathaniel, I think we have time for one more question, and then we'll wrap things up to try to get people as close to time as we can. Mary Wood, can we invite you up on the virtual stage and to ask your question?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, this is a great format. I've never participated in anything like this. So talk about interactive. I love it. I do have a question about how you know the impact or the outcome of your efforts. I read about the numbers, how many people respond or how many people listen to something, but it's always really tricky to find out how you, what difference you're making. And I'm also aware that it costs money to find out what difference you're making in many cases. So I'd appreciate some comments on your method of outcome evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, using, and this will go a little outside the discussion, but before we develop any contents, we go through the project implementation process. So for a typical radio program to be developed and also have contents on our interactive application, we go through the formative research, or sometimes we go through the baseline, depending on the scope of the projects. So the baseline or the formative research gives us the basis or a clear understanding of the issues on the ground. And based on that issue or based on those findings, we take that information and we develop a content design. So that content design brings all the stakeholders on board, including the farmers, the experts, the partners, all on one table to develop a content for the radio program. Now, these contents are now then translated into radio shows, which will be broadcast. Now, because a baseline has been conducted and a clear, outcome has been detected or has been captured, the midline or the end line gives us a clear indication on the impacts of the radio program. Now, using a tool like this will not give you, the sample size that you are looking at, but it complements the overall outcome of your findings. So based on the formative research that has been done, the team, our mail team that's monitoring, evaluation, and research and learning team goes back to these same communities to find out the impact of it. And then the evaluation aspects, they do the same thing on the ground to find out what has transpired. Apart from that, too, these two also help us for us to do a longitudinal survey where you have the same group of people interacting with the application throughout the campaign so that you can look at the trend, of their response so that a decision can be, be taken or an outcome can be concluded based on the results that has been gathered. So it is not just the interactive aspects, but it's a combination of different elements that comes together and ensure that interactive radio is well designed and produced by Farm Radio.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
And Mary, that definitely gives us some good food for thought in terms of what we might do in a future conversation with our monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning team too. So we might, if that's something that you're keen to hear more about, or if others are keen to hear more about that type of impact evaluation and outcome measurement, please do leave that in the survey at the end. But unfortunately, we're at time, and we know we have a number of questions. So what we'll try to do is get some answers in the form of a blog post or a follow-up email in the coming week or two so that you get the answers to your questions. But love to give a huge shout out and thank you to Nathaniel for joining us and for sharing just his wisdom and his passion for all things farm radio, and super grateful, Nat, that you were able to take some time to share with us all the wonderful things that you're doing and that your team is doing. And we're so grateful as well just to have you on the team with your energy and enthusiasm and skill. So thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope I did not sound technical. I tried as much as possible to break all the elements and make it very easy for us to relate with. So thank you also for the opportunity, and I'm grateful for this time. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone again so much, not just for joining us, but also for supporting Farm Radio in the way that you do. We don't get to continue to do this great work without your support. And I hope you get to see, or this gave you a bit more of a glimpse into the type of work that you are supporting every single day. And we're super grateful for that. And we hope you'll join us for more of these types of conversations, and that you will give us that feedback so that we can tailor these to fit even more of the types of things that you're looking to learn about. And also a huge thank you to our comms and our fundraising teams for all their work behind the scenes, answering your questions, making sure that we remain on time, and organizing logistics. These things also don't happen without them. So please make sure you give all of them a big virtual round of applause wherever you are. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we can't wait to chat with you more about everything Farm Radio and answer any of the questions you might have. Thank you, and have a great rest of your afternoon or evening, or wherever the time zone is taking you.